Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Community and Culture Committee meeting of Monday, the 13th of October, 2025. I'll declare the meeting open at 6:02 p.m. I'd also like to acknowledge the Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, who are the traditional custodians of all lands, waters and sky in the Georges River area. I'd like to pay my respects to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples who live, work and meet on these lands. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Apologies. We've received an apology from Councillor Nancy Liu, and I can see that everybody else is present, so we won't need to, we actually will need to move and that particular moved by the Mayor, Councillor Borg, and seconded by Councillor Mort. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? Okay, we declare that carried. So that was for a leave of absence. Sorry, I should have been more specific with that. And we will move to, we have no request to attend tonight's meeting remotely because everybody's here. The notice of live streaming. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is being recorded for minute-taking purposes and is also being broadcast live to the public on Council's website in accordance with Section 5 of Council's Code of Meeting Practice. The recording will be made available on Council's website. The Code of Meeting Practice. The order of business is as shown in the agenda, which has been made available. Staff and public are reminded that this meeting is open. Doors to the meeting room are to be left open unless the meeting moves into a closed or confidential session, according to Section 14 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Only if the meeting moves into a closed or confidential session will the public broadcasting of the meeting be suspended. Council's Code of Meeting Practice prohibits the electronic recording of meetings without the express permission of Council. Mobile phones must be turned to silent during the meetings. Disclosures of interest. Do any councillors have any interest to declare tonight? No? Okay. Public forum. We have no speakers registered for tonight's meeting. So our first item is to confirm the minutes of the last meeting, which was COM 043-25 of the Community and Culture Committee meeting held on 8th of September 2025. Can I have a mover for this? That's moved by Councillor Mort and seconded by Councillor Dmowski. All those in favour, please say aye. Anyone against? Okay, we'll declare that one carried. And we will now move to our first committee report for tonight, which is COM 044-25, place naming policy. Before we go to a report from Manager Justin Yeomans, I'll call for a mover and a seconder for this item, please. Moved by Councillor Mort and seconded by Councillor Allison. And thank you. We'll go to Mr. Yeomans for an overview of this report. Thanks, Justin.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, councillors. This report concerns the place naming policy review that was undertaken by council officers and is summarised there in the report. Basically, we're recommending that council endorses that revised draft policy and that it's put on public exhibition before coming back to council for formal approval. The report outlines the changes that we've made and some of those constraints that are on council when it comes to place naming. It's a regulatory environment where New South Wales policy applies, especially when it comes to the naming of places and roads, where there's hundreds of pages of guidelines for those things that we comply with. So what's happened this time around has been a comprehensive review of the policy, and on paper it looks quite different to the current policy, but the effect is largely the same. What we've done is taken a real plain English review, including a really simple structure. There's 5 sections now where hopefully it's easier for councillors, council and the community to understand and follow the requirements. And we've based that structure on the kind of feedback that we've received over the years and through a bit of consultation during that review phase that's summarised in the report. I do want to pull out 2 key areas of change in the policy. If you're looking at paragraph 16 of the report, and that's section 2.2 of the policy, we've expanded the kind of names that council will consider to specifically include flora, fauna and natural characteristics. We had specific feedback from the community that that's one of those things that should be named, just like, you know, some other characteristics of the area and name. So that's been included in that revised draft. The other key change, which is also an expansion that I'd like to mention, is paragraph 17 of the report, and that's section 3 of the revised policy. That's about memorial plaques. So over the years, we have a lot of requests for this kind of thing, and under the existing policy, it's often hard for council officers to approve those because of the criteria when it comes to evaluating. So effectively, that criteria has been simplified and recognises that a simple name plaque shouldn't have the same stringent criteria as a permanent place name or a historical marker, which require evidence of historical significance and contribution to the community. So yeah, we come down to an existing bench being available and family members nominating, and the simple steps that are outlined in the policy and the report. With those key changes in mind, at this stage, are there any questions from councillors about that proposed revised draft of the policy?
Any questions, councillors? Any comments at all? Councillor Mott.
To say thank you for that, because I've had a couple of particular requests from residents that have loved ones passed, and so some other little things happening around the area that would really be very, very grateful for those couple of changes. So much appreciated. Thank you.
I just had a question for people who may wish to take up those options for memorial plaques. Does the policy outline how they would then make that application? If they're not, is it still through the place naming policy but with less restrictions, or how would they go about doing that? And is it something that people just ad hoc make an application for, or do we run a program, or how does that work, I guess?
Thanks, Madam Mayor. That's a great question through you, Madam Chair. So in the revised draft, the memorials plaques, well, the section on memorials is section 3, and there's a pretty simple breakdown for, say it was a memorial plaque or a marked memorial tree. There's the requirements there in 3.2, which are followed. Understanding that people don't even know a policy exists, they just want to ask. When council endorses this, if it should come through community exhibition, we incorporate any changes, and that proposed revised policy would be supported by procedural documents, including an online form. We don't currently have an online form for that, but with simple drop-down menus to help people just attach what they need to. Simple work for council officers to work out: is there a bench available? Was it nominated by a family member? Is the person deceased? No duplicate, they don't already have a plaque. It's pretty much as simple as that. But we'll have an online form for that. Once we've got that, it's easy to promote as well, do a bit of a program about it.
Thank you. So it basically sits outside the policy. It's just more of like a regulation procedural sort of thing that will come with it. No, that's great. Yeah, I think it's a bit of an improvement on the previous policy, and I do like the fact that there's a capacity for people to apply for memorial plaques. I think that is a really nice way of commemorating somebody. We do have a few trees around. Carts Park springs to mind of people wanting to have a commemorative tree for a lost loved one. I think that's a really lovely idea. And the other thing that I think is nice is sort of formalising roadside memorials, which are going to spring up regardless of whatever the council regulations are, and just being, I think, showing some compassion to that and providing them the room to do that. And obviously they're not going to be able to erect a structure, but just sort of tokens of commemoration, I think, are a really important thing for people who are grieving a lost loved one. So I think it's well done. So thank you for that. Are there any further questions or comments, councillors?
I had a couple of questions, sorry. It says that the cost of the plaque is at the applicant's expense. What is the approximate cost of one of these plaques?
We have a design for that, but we don't have a quote, Madam Mayor. The thing, it'd be hard to have a completely low cost because we can't do them in advance. We do them as required. Yeah, I couldn't guess that.
Okay,
the size
that's fine.
Size is quite small.
I guess my next question would be, if I'm thinking, because it's kind of, I get that family and friends may want to do it, but what you often see in other places is like clubs like Lions clubs and stuff like that. They often you know, are sponsoring park benches. I can see that in a lot of rural regional areas. Like, would there be grant opportunities where they could apply to council for a grant to fund a plaque? That's a question. You don't have to have the answer to it. I'll just
Through you, Madam Chair. At this stage, no, but we are reviewing the financial assistance program in the coming months, so it is something that we could consider. In terms of a fee for the plaque, whilst there's not a quote yet for that fit for purpose, we have benchmarked other councils, and it's around 170-ish, so it's not a huge impost. Yeah, other councils you pay for a bench or you pay for you know, a specific tree and things like that, but this is just the small plaque that would sit on that.
On existing assets?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments on this item? No? Are we sure? Okay, if that's the case, we might move it, and we're not going to go around the room. We're just actually going to call for all those in favour. Please say aye. Is there anybody against? Okay, we'll declare that one carried. And councillors, we're now going to move into a closed session to discuss the next item. And I'll just go through the script for this so that we can do it all properly. At this stage of the meeting, the time being 6:13 p.m, I hereby advise that the meeting will move into a committee of the whole to allow consideration of a matter in closed session in accordance with Section 10A of the Local Government Act 1993. Accordingly, members of the press and public are excluded from the closed session, and access to the confidential documents relating to the item considered during the course of the closed session will be withheld. This action is being taken to allow discussion of the confidential attachments to item COM 045-25 T25/006 Jubilee Stadium naming rights sponsorship. Now, procedure to move into closed session. Can the Director of Community and Culture please inform the committee if any representations have been received from the public gallery that the item should not be discussed in closed session? There have been none, and I don't think there will be any objections from the public gallery to moving into the closed session because there's nobody there apart from staff. So I'll put a procedural motion as follows. Then, in accordance with Section 10A Clause 2 of the Local Government Act 1993, Council enter into closed session to discuss the confidential attachment to item COM 045-25 T25/006 Jubilee Stadium naming rights sponsorship. I'd like to call for a mover and a seconder. Oh, actually, no, I can just move that as procedural motion, can't I, from the chair? Yeah, so I'll move that, and we don't need a seconder for that. All those in favour? Anyone against? Okay, we'll declare that carried. Now, please request staff to cease our webcasting and to close the doors of the meeting. And we're back, and we're dealing with item COM 045-25 T25/006 Jubilee Stadium naming rights sponsorship. We've just come back from confidential session where we were discussing a confidential report, and before we actually move it, we're going to hear a report from Manager Margaret Lee, who's going to give us an overview of the report. Thank you, Margaret.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Good evening, councillors. This report is about the Jubilee Stadium naming rights sponsorship. Councillors, if you recall, in March this year, Council resolved to terminate the contract of a previous naming rights sponsorship agreement. Since that time, an expression of interest, then a tender process has commenced and been completed, resulting in the report to you tonight. Essentially, the report recommends that Council declines the tenders that have been received due to a satisfactory outcome not being able to be achieved by the tenderers listed, and following that approval by Council officers will then be able to enter a negotiation stage with an anticipated outcome to be presented to Council at the February Council meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Lee. Just a reminder, councillors, it was moved by Councillor Mort and seconded by Councillor Allison. Is there any further discussion? Okay, well then we might put it. So we're going to move this. All those in favour, please say aye. Anybody against? Okay, we'll declare that carried. And There being no other business on the agenda, I'll declare the meeting closed at 6:37 p.m. Thank you everybody for your attendance, and thank you to our staff and contributors to the business paper this evening. Thank you.